and you can launch a war and you never have to fight in it.
And you hide the cost by just paying money.
You print money.
It's worth double clicking on something Balaji said, which is if you had invested in Ethereum at 3 cents or whatever the ICO was, that's a
30.
Or whatever, 30 cents. That's you would know perhaps, that was a better investment than investing in Facebook or Google at the seed round.
Yeah, it's true.
700x within 2 or 3 years, fully liquid.
Yep. Say more about some of the, so don't worry, you guys didn't miss anything. say more about some of the...
And it was open to everybody.
Yeah.
And ironically, the people who missed it were the venture capitalists.
Yep. Yeah, there's some karma, or some great irony there. Talk more about what society looks like in a world in which everyone's an investor, or there are way more investors. And I'm particularly interested in, because the life of the average American.
Yeah, first it looks like a giant casino, right? First it goes completely crazy while everybody
loses money.
Everybody scams everybody. A lot of people
that
lose
lady
money.
at the slots.
But you kind of have to let them go through that. It's a learning curve. It's like it took a while before the Securities Act came along and divided penny stocks from public stocks and what was considered legit and what wasn't. So it'll take a while for people to figure it out, and there'll be some money lost along the way, but it's a global learning curve. It's distributed across 7 billion people. It's happened very quickly. I would argue that, the recent downturn has been great. Crypto's had 75-80% of its value wiped out. Some of these coins are down 95% and will fully disappear. That's good, because it's going to teach people that, you can't trust everything you read on the internet. And you certainly can't send money to strangers on the internet based on what they wrote. It'll raise the levels of diligence. It'll raise the requirements for investing. And I'm hoping that out of it, we will see at some point a real investment market will emerge. But in the short to medium term, it looks like a big casino.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. I think a lot of the things that in Silicon Valley we've developed, like term sheets that contemplate things like liquidation preferences and drag along and stuff like that, they're all based on previous train crashes or car crashes that happened, like, big conflicts that happened in the past. And then lawyers go and bake that into contracts to avoid those things happening in the future. I think you're going to start to see a lot of that baked into smart contracts, where a lot of the wisdom of, how investments have worked gets baked in, and folks start getting 1, 2, 3 year lockups on their crypto. You're already starting to see this type of stuff, and incentives start getting aligned. And so I'm, optimistic in the medium term that, once you've got those contracts out there and folks have done diligence on them and they've proven that they're also in for the long term alongside you, then you're going to be more likely to listen to their recommendations on the coin, and then you'd buy in. So I think it's a process, but I do think there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, long term, you'll see that a lot of these crowdfundings online, to the extent they still happen, will require that the money goes into smart contracts that then very carefully bleed out the money to the developers or people as they hit milestones that are verified by third parties or held in escrow, and that as revenues come in, taxes are automatically paid and pieces are siphoned off and dividended to the investors and so on. Ronald Coase, the economist, famously said that a firm is just a nexus of contracts, and you can take the nexus of contracts here and you can program the whole thing. You don't necessarily need lawyers and bankers and judges watching every little piece. For a lot of the simple stuff, you can just have it be on Rails. And the first company that does it, because it's open source, the second company will just copy it and copy it and copy it. You won't have to reinvent the wheel. It's just like with code. It'll create layers and layers that people will build on until our kids will probably, to them, creating a company will be, they'll just hit one button and like a whole series of smart contracts will fire up and a company will get created. And they'll drag and drop in who's an employee, who's an investor, who's owed how much, and you'll be able to run this completely distributed, virtual, auditable, trackable, trustless company without needing armies of lawyers and judges.
Yeah, and actually, just to kind of emphasize that or drill into that, when you go and buy a car from somebody, right? They sell it to you, and the most important thing they're selling to you is the keys. You put in the keys, and the car turns on. Great, you can go with it, right? When you go and sell a company to somebody, it's not yet a machine like that, right? The owner can't just leave and you can't just operate it on your own. There's all of this hidden knowledge and, how to give this instruction to this person, what's the context of this contract, et cetera. The more and more of that we can encode into a nexus of contracts, a system of smart contracts, the more salable and liquid a company is, because it's like a machine that you can just sell for its future cash flows, right? And I think that's going to start with just basic websites like, let's say, a file conversion service or something like that. That's the kind of thing where you can start to imagine, okay, it's got this many visitors a month. It's just code that executes on inputs and returns outputs. That's the first kind of thing I could imagine that starts to get sold in this fashion. But then over time, more and more complex companies start to become machines like cars that you can just sell and then operate without the owner.
So if the firm goes away or the way we understand company building becomes radically different, what skill sets are now needed much more in order to thrive in a new blockchain economy?
It's the same skill sets that are always needed. Anything that a computer can eventually be trained to do, a computer will do. And the things that computers